All right, great. Thank you. All right, so hello everyone, and thank you for joining the Bicycle Comfort Breakout session. My name is Connor Campobasso, and I'm with the Palm Beach TPA, and I'll be assisting with the session today and helping with any questions specific to the El Rio Trail and the surrounding area. Before we get into the presentations, I do want to go over a few details about the session. So everybody should be on mute unless speaking to avoid any background noise. So if you're currently unmuted, we do ask that you mute yourself now. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. However, if you do have any questions, throughout the presentation, you can enter those in the chat box and we'll try to answer those for you. Like I mentioned, at the end of the presentation, you'll be able to ask questions directly, but we do ask that you use the raise your hand feature built into Teams. That being said, we do want this to be interactive, so we do highly encourage your questions. So we do have two fantastic speakers today. So first you'll be hearing from Adrian Puentes from Becken, Davila, and Puentes, and then you'll be hearing from Shores Van Duren from Royal Hoskening DHV. So with that, I do look forward to the presentations and discussion here today, and I will pass it over to Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Just let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So again, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invite. And thank you very much for the introduction, George before and Connor. Well, the end goal of this presentation is to add to what George explained, is to discuss what's the meaning of bicycle comfort and how to create a system and culture that is inclusive, comfortable, and encourages cycling for all at El Rio Trail. To begin with, I would like to make it clear what we're talking about when we refer to infrastructure and comfort. The dictionary says that infrastructure are the basic physical and organizational structures and facilities such as buildings, roads, power supplies needed for the operation of a society or enterprise. This is, of course, the traditional term of infrastructure, and I wanted to put it somehow in crisis. I prefer to talk about landscape infrastructure or infrastructural landscape instead. I'll explain this later on, but this is related to a methodology that expands the performance parameters of a designed landscape to a multifunctional high-performance system, including, of course, those systems originally ascribed to traditional infrastructure, buildings, roads, power supplies as well. So this is, I think, is very important to clarify before we open the discussion. The second word, comfort, can be defined as a state of physical ease and freedom from pain or constraint. The second definition is related to things that contribute to physical ease and well-being. Again, this is important for the discussion, and of course, at the end, we would like to hear from you what is your understanding of comfort, and of course, how can we translate this into bicycle infrastructure and to a Rio Trail. Coming back to this concept of infrastructure, on the left, we can see this analogy of the city, a metaphor maybe, where every color represents an urban system, an infrastructural landscape. The existing condition in some cases can be a city or can be a part of a city. In some of the cases is chaotic or sometimes it's not sufficient to cover the urban needs. So the first action then will be to identify the main systems and to organize them in such a way that they strategically overlap to create what we say frictions, connections, synergy. This the main infrastructures that I'm talking about could be, of course, the green flows, the water infrastructure, and mobility, of course, sustainable mobility, and others that can be combined strategically. This is an example of how can we sketch an urban strategy through these concepts, where flows, well, we refer to infrastructure sometimes as flows that can overlap, expand also, like these green infrastructures sometimes are expanding, contracting, and when they overlap to another infrastructure, they generate frictions, ecotones. This is very, very important. In our way of understanding the city as an organism, we agree with this multidimensional approach. Here we understand that we cannot debate about the city only from one or two aspects, but through its complexity. We need to talk about inclusion, safety, ecosystems, climate adaptation, health, identity, etc., if we want comfort in our cities, in our infrastructures. In the Netherlands, we developed the infrastructure for the bicycle, understanding a wide range of users for the fast and for the slow flow. These concepts and the different users transform the infrastructure and the public space. As we can see in the image on the left-hand side of the screen, what we can define fast flow when you want to go to A from Z as fast as possible, but also the slow flow that propose the meeting, the different aspects of also enjoying public space. Of course, little by little, an impressive network of separate bike lanes, junctions, signs, bridges, etc. was created in this small country. And we think that this is the best possible synergy that we can seek as urban planners. This interaction defines the urban tissue. We can see its transformative power in our cities that are livable, happier, and healthier. Comfort in these concepts can be achieved by overlapping these different urban layers, and of course by good design. Design is also an important aspect. I would like to share with you only one project that we did in Oaxaca, in Mexico, not so long ago, where we tried to apply what I explained so far, basically. Just briefly, the request was to develop a general mobility plan and to design a pilot project in an important corridor in the historical area of the city. We started to work, and at some point in the process, we decided to incorporate other infrastructures to the proposal, and we ended up into that is more like this. A complex system of interactions where mobility was an opportunity to do more. And probably I would say that this is the main message here, right? So when we have a commission or we have a task like this to develop mobility, or could be another infrastructure like a water infrastructure that sometimes we also as an office we receive, we also see, we try to incorporate the other systems into this complexity to bring more. This is the existing situation of this street. You can see the small picture on the left with all this traffic and all these issues. Very hot in the summer, with flooded sometimes when it's raining, etc. So, well, of course, after a study, we managed to move part of this traffic to different streets. We brought sustainable mobility, 2 bike lanes on each side of the street. We reduced the street, and we basically designed all this space from facade to facade. We incorporate mitigation and infiltration, water management, basically measures. And at the end, or the end result was a linear part, was not just solving one aspect of mobility, but all this complexity of urban and public space. here some details that, of course, we developed, the materials and some strategies to storage water. And well, as you can see in these images, different textures, adding design, of course, always. Some visuals of how we imagine this transformation. Of course, it is always critical, very, very important to bring society to create, organize this participatory process whatever you perform. So this is also one of the main issues for us. Then we can conclude that we need to understand the complexity of all the systems and their interactions. If we overlap these flows, these infrastructures, we could create positive and better frictions, comfort, in other words. It is mandatory to engage local communities along the process, build multidisciplinary teams, and never underestimate local-based knowledge. Well, after Sjoerd's present, of course, we would like to discuss with you. These are the images of a real trail. What's there and what's missing in terms of, or related to what I try to explain. So thanks very much, and I'm handed over to Sjoerd now. Stop sharing.
Thank you, Adrian. Let me start up in a minute. It always takes a few mouse clicks to switch. So let's see. Here we go. If everything goes according to plan, you should see my first slide. And before I start talking about cycling with comfort, I want to stress one thing. And it is that we in the Netherlands take great care, and some of us take great pride in building roads where you can drive with comfort. And I want to stress this because we are a car country. I actually, also mainly due to COVID, I drove already 250 kilometers a day, visiting 4 places on motorways like this. So it is easy to drive a car, but it's also good to ride a bicycle. And we have some beautiful pictures to show. So even although driving is easy in the Netherlands, we are one of the leading cycling countries, and we've been able to do that with traffic and spatial planning, which integrates both, and we look at comfort. But first and foremost, a little bit on language. I did a Google image search for the word fietser, which is a Dutch word for cyclist. And then you get these pictures. Happy people cycling, upright bikes, laughing, and very relaxed. So if I talk about fietsen or cycling in the Netherlands, as I use the word fietsen, people think of these images. This is also very relaxed. People are, you might even call them comfortable in what they are doing. So then I'm going to the English and I put in the word cyclists and I get these pictures. Extremely sporty people. I wouldn't say really comfortable, but very much exercise or purpose driven. So if you look at this guy and compare him to these people, you see a distinct difference. And this is also one of the questions I want to raise. For whom are you planning a comfortable bicycle path? Who do you want to attract? There are different reasons why people ride a bicycle. And if you plan for the English cyclist, you get a plan like this cycling highway in the median of a motorway. Or you think that cycling is benefited by long winding bridges, completely windy, open, and to be honest, probably extremely boring kind of cycling super highways which have been envisioned in London. These are pictures of the cycling highways I planned. In obviously completely flat Netherlands, but having been to South Florida, I know you're probably even flatter than we are. Well, there on the left, that's a Dutch hill to an on-ramp. These look traffic engineered, but you can also go further and say, hey, what does a cycling highway mean? It is an integrated route. You don't have to build it like 10 meters, like 30 feet wide. You can suffice with 12 feet probably for bi-directional. You can include a beautiful walking path here on the right. Why those people walk here on the left, I don't know, but we provided for them their own space to walk. And you see the people coming and using it. And this is our utilitarian path. We planned it with money to alleviate congestion on the motorways. But you see that most people are riding here relaxed. And that might seem like a contradiction. But if you want to attract commuters to riding, they might not choose the bicycle because it's the fastest way. Usually they don't, not even in the Netherlands, but just because they like the ride. And that's why comfortable and attractive cycle routes matter. And it differs what people like, but also how you can integrate a route. And I think that's where we really come into also what Adrian is saying. You really have to look at the route and the characteristics, whether it will work. So I was in Italy, in the Alps, and this path here on the right, I actually would say it's maybe not 12 feet or 4 meters wide, and it might not be as beautifully built as in the Netherlands, but I think it still could be defined as a kind of a very cycling highway, or could be defined as a very comfortable and attractive route. Who wouldn't want to commute here with that view every day? So it's not also about, it's engineering, but it's also the environment and the way you view your project. And enjoying the ride is, I think, really important. And you see in this little video that there are different users with different reasons, and even you can ride without hands on the steering wheel, on the handlebars. So there are different reasons why people choose to ride. And a trail can be multifunctional for mothers with children, school kids riding to school, and even junior school or primary school kids using the trail as a sporting activity. But important for them, for example, is that they feel safe and seen, and that there are no high-speed vehicles. You can build really nice things like this underpass, which was built within a week. So we closed down the motorway. We dug a hole and we put these concrete elements in. And this project was funded and opened by politicians on the premise that we would lure motorists away from the car and would reduce congestion. But as you can see, this route is so comfortable that even the youngest users are able to use it. And what we also actually see on this cycling highway was built functional, but we paid attention to where it is, how it looks, and to make sure that people feel relaxed. We see that in the weekends, this route is actually being used almost as much as during the week. And I'm really proud to say that this route, this trail, it is officially a cycling highway, officially determined to reduce congestion and be purely utilitarian. So maybe it could be focused in terms of policies at the cyclist who is going fast and very efficient, maybe the English cyclist. But we are actually luring the Dutch fietsers towards our infrastructure as well, and making sure that they are actually, and our investment is better used. One thing which I would like to say is that we also paid attention to marketing, and we really looked to make sure that people are aware of the route. We developed a logo and name, just like you do. And when we looked at lighting, there was one way where we could, how we could make sure that the car drivers and motorists were aware of a different solution is with the lights. It's a logo, and those lights light up at the sides. So there are 3 rounds, and each tree is an LED light, which lights the cycle path itself. But the 3 rounds themselves light up at the side. So when you're going to Arnhem, you see a pink or a lila light lighting up, and there is no motorist on the motorway who now does not know that there is a comfortable, attractive alternative to his motorized vehicle and to being stuck in a traffic jam. And with these examples, I just want to inspire you to think about what is comfort, what is the cyclist or the fietser you're working for, and how can we improve the trail itself, and what kind of solutions are available. I think we're going towards the discussion now. We haven't been really on topic in terms of really concrete ideas on how to improve the trail, and we did this on purpose because we want to have the discussion. But both Adrian and I, we've got numerous examples with us and available. So if you have got questions or if you are looking for concrete ideas or examples, we can give them to you and provide them during the discussion. Thank you for listening. And Connor, I guess the floor is back to you.
Sure thing. Yeah. Great presentations, everybody. That was fantastic. I especially like those lights and increasing the visibility, to the drivers and letting them know. Because sometimes, I mean, especially even with the El Rio Trail, sometimes you don't even know it's there. I mean, it's kind of next to a canal between the university and kind of winds, which is good. It separates you completely from cars, but letting people know that it's there is important too. And so I think it.
Yeah, I think that has to do with the mental map. If you're a driver all your life, your mental map is, I've got I-95, I've got the turnpike, I've got the roads in between, and that's how I literally roll around the city. But if you're a pedestrian or a cyclist, or if you use the sun, your mental map changes and you suddenly start to see those trails. But I think one of the biggest challenges is actually to change people's behavior, is to make sure that their mental map actually changes from having the I-95 as your backbone for north-south transportation towards a trail or something else. And achieving that is a soft thing in terms of communications and marketing, but you need to also make sure that the to-be cyclist will be treated just as comfortably in terms of infrastructure as he would have been as a car driver, which is probably also why the Netherlands is also a good country to drive in, as it is to ride a bicycle.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't see any questions yet, but I do have some myself, if you don't mind. So
go ahead.
Today I used the trail quite a bit, especially a few years ago. I used it to commute from work to school, and then on the way back as well. And I would commute to the train station. So I used it quite a bit back in the day. And I think, and still to this day, I was out there recently, and I think one of the biggest issues is the crossings, especially there's this intersection at Spanish River where it's a little bit dicey to cross sometimes. So is there any specific treatments that make crossings a little bit more comfortable, especially when, the grade separation is obviously ideal, not having those intersections at all, but especially if room or if funding isn't there for it. Is there any kind of special treatments that the Dutch use to address that?
Charles?
Yeah, quite a few, to be honest. So really, it's first and foremost situation, because what do you cross? Do you cross a 4-lane highway, or do you cross a 2-lane highway with a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit? So there are quite a few treatments. I think that what we're looking at is, in terms of comfort, is that you actually want to reduce the risk of having a full stop as a cyclist as much as possible. And because the one thing which is annoying is when you're riding a bike, you have got momentum, you're really going smoothly, and then suddenly you have to come to a full stop and look right, left, and then go on. So what we try to do is give the cyclist priority, but that only works in certain cases. So usually when there is a limited car traffic and 20 miles an hour, and there are more than enough cyclists. So the motorists know and expect that a cyclist may cross. So that would be so a lot of cyclists, small number of motorist solutions. But if we level it up a little bit, and you're looking at grade crossings, I would actually prefer the roundabouts. I know they are sometimes heavily discussed in the US, but the good thing about a roundabout is that you can actually, with segregated cycling facilities, you are able to give the cyclist the same priority as car traffic on a roundabout has. And motorists have to slow down at all occasions if you design a roundabout right. It's about geometry. So so you can give the cyclist priority, and if something happens, the outcome of the accident is lower because of the lowered speed limits. And I'm actually loading up my database with examples. And I think so for me, at this trail, I would say at a few points you could do roundabouts, and the third level where you have a high level of motorized traffic. So for example, 4-lane road, you could maybe look also at traffic light systems with early detection systems. So there are, for example, a camera or other systems available which are able to detect the cyclist and give him, for example, green so that he might slow down to 10 or 15 kilometers an hour, 8 to 12 miles. He doesn't come to a full stop, but he will get a green light, and you can inform him during the slowdown or the process leading into it. And especially with cameras, you can even detect groups of cyclists. So, for example, we've got a lot of school kids going to school, and there are situations where a camera might detect 25 people coming and hitting a traffic light, and they will then get a prioritized green over the car. So that's, in short, three possible solutions.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think there is. Oh, I'm sorry, Adrian, go ahead.
No. Just to add to that, because of course we have plenty of technical solutions, but maybe it's interesting also to think about how can we achieve some signals, if you want, through design. Like, for instance, we can change the texture of the pavement for cars to already make them aware that something is happening soon. Also, what's going on with the landscape around the paths. So I think it's important when we think about this type of infrastructures, we're talking about time, right? When we talk about time, we can tell a story, and by telling this story, we can incorporate different situations, different elements. Just that.
Great. We do have some hands raised now. So Tiffany, if you would like to unmute yourself.
Yes, my first question was about the underpass. You said it was constructed in a week, and I get like constructed in a week, that might be possible, but as far as the actual process, how long, can you give an approximation of the process from beginning to end? Because when it comes to us and political will, our projects might take 10 years, and the politics change. They change drastically. So if you have some sort of expedited process, I'd be very, very interested in maybe getting back best practices on how we can be better.
I wish I had. I showed a picture there with ribbon cutting. This was actually a project with 4 municipalities, 1 province, 1 regional government, 1 national road authority, 1 national ministry, and I'm probably forgetting some partners. So it took us, I think we started planning in 2008-9, and we were finished in 2015, which is seen as an incredibly quick implementation of a cycling project. My tip would be cycling projects can be seen, if framed right, as very cuddly, as really small. We were talking about a 17 million euro project, but in the meantime, there were projects being planned for 700 million euros, which would be an highway expansion or some other. And by cooperating with these municipalities and constantly moving back and forth between the engineers, it's like, hey, what are your concerns, and how can we develop a plan which works out? And moving up to the politicians, hey, what do you need? What are your concerns? What are your worries? And trying to adapt the plan and getting funds, mixed in between. That helped, and I think that was a pragmatic way. And I think, Adrian, go ahead with your vision and long-term planning, because I think that is the second part. Go ahead. You're muted.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, again, time, right? We always have this type of questions, like everywhere we go, we do these workshops, and it's always like, how can you manage? I mean, if we have a 4-year term change of government, or I think it's very, very important to highlight how the Netherlands have these processes of long-term visions, and whatever happens, whatever party is at managing the programs stays the same. We have these programs like A Room for the Rivers, like all kinds of programs that are running already for 25 years. So I think it's important. Governance is a very important topic here to bring to the table too. Strong governance, participatory, horizontal. Everybody is engaged. When you socialize these processes, you make it stronger, and then you can take your time to do it and to achieve your goals.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you for the question.
I'm putting an addition to the chat actually as well, because it's indeed about framing. Because what I'm looking at as well is sometimes it takes. When I was working for the regional government, and what I also advise is, I have a few projects lying on shelves. Sometimes a program pops up where your project fits in. It's like a space for the river or the congestion relief program, which I was talking about. And then develop a narrative or a framework with which you can move your project into an alignment with the goals of the other government or the other party, and then try to build this coalition of people who support your idea. And so it's a lot of governments, and yes, it will take a long time. But sometimes you hit the sweet spot, and then suddenly you get the funding, you get the support. And then I know you guys in the US are better than us at actually getting things done on the ground. That's sometimes I'm looking with jealousy at the US as how quick something can get done if you have support.
Great. All right. Well, it looks like the next question is from Milos.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Milos Majstorovic. I'm Transportation Manager for the City of Miami Beach. Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for a great presentation. So the question that I have, or a couple of questions, are, based on your experience, do you see more and more motorized bikes using these paths? And how do you limit the speed? Do you limit the speed of these bikes? Because depending on different classes of bikes, some of these bikes can go up to 28 miles per hour, which is over, what would that be? Over 35 kilometers per hour.
There are a few. I'm hearing an echo. Milos, can you mute yourself? Thank you. I think this is better. In the EU, we have regulations regarding bicycles, and I think the first category is the pedelec, which is the pedal-assisted bicycle, which only supports you up to a speed of 25 kilometers an hour, which would roughly be, I guess, 18 miles an hour. And then after that, you do not longer get support from the engine, but you can, if you want to, you can still go quicker if you're very sporty. That's the first category. That category is treated as a cyclist, and we really see an uptick also in the Netherlands in that category, because it enables people to go actually with less effort further and faster. Then we have the second category, and I think that's the category you're also mostly talking about. That's we call it the speed pedelec. And it's actually in the Netherlands and in the EU now regarded as an official moped, which means it has a regulated speed limit of about 30 miles an hour, 45 kilometers an hour. So and it will provide support up to 2000 watts, which is important because it's almost like a motorcycle, but limited to 40. And you have to wear a full helmet. Where with a electric assisted bicycle, you do not have to wear a helmet. This category is indeed a very difficult category. What we now actually see in the Netherlands and what we try to actually achieve is that we put a speed pedelec on outer urban, so inter-urban cycling highways, because that's the place where car traffic goes 50 miles an hour or quicker. So then we place them on well-positioned cycling infrastructure. And within the city, there is a discussion based on the type of road, whether the speed pedelec stays on the cycling path or goes on the road and mixing with heavy vehicles. But in terms of percentages, and I think that the electrical assisted bicycle is about 95% of the market at this point, and those speed pedelecs about 5%. Rough guesses.
Understood. Thank you very much for that answer. So the follow-up question is, you know, when you have a mix, even for the first category, which is up to 25 miles per hour, how you segregate pedestrians from the bikes, how you ensure safety, that there are no basically conflicts between two, and how you ultimately enforce everything and everyone using their basically dedicated space, including this very different type of bike operation, which can develop speed of up to 45 miles per hour. How you basically enforce them not going into the paths that they shouldn't be going.
I'm talking about kilometers an hour, 25 kilometers and 45 kilometers an hour, which is of course a difference of 60%.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
So, well, the pedestrian question is always is also partially a design question, but it's also an expectation question. Do people expect cyclists? Do people expect people walking here? Outside of urban areas, you saw, I showed you the yellow asphalt path with the footpath beside it. Funnily enough, there are not enough cyclists to make the pedestrians walk on the footpath. So, but then there also isn't really that big of a problem, in my opinion, because you see that because we have more fietsers than cyclists, so we have it's a bit more relaxed and it can mix and match until a certain level. I'm going to show you a very quick video. I'm hoping it works. Of an approach to a roundabout. And here you see, for example, this is a heavy cyclist area. And you see that we provide a dedicated pedestrian path with also a distinction in materials. So it's very clear where the space for the pedestrian and where the cyclist is. And actually you see by the red asphalt, even the car cycling space is differentiated. And here we do not have that much of a problem of conflict between the pedestrian and the cyclist. I think Adrian also has something to say on this topic.
I completely agree with what you said, Sjors. I think, of course, we have a lot of studies and technical answers to this question, but I think everything is a matter of first understanding the user, understanding what's the goal to be achieved in terms of a vision again. So there are like functional aspects that I see that are very much concerned in this discussion, but I think there are others that can be also be very, very helpful tools, like Sjors explained, working with different materials, small details, more elements, and how to work with that, how to build up with these elements. So that's it.
Thank you. I have just one more and I'm done, hopefully. So I haven't seen a lot of signage. I've seen different color of material and whatnot, which we are using in here as well. And you know what we here locally, we have one pad that was just built recently, which goes along the entire length of the city. It is called a beach walk, and it's between basically the last line of buildings, and it's sandwiched by buildings and by the beach. So it's basically beachfront pad that is used by both pedestrians and bikes, and it's very popular. And the width of it depends really on the section, but it's close to 7 miles long. And it's anywhere between 15 to, I believe, 25 or 30 feet. So, we really have some issues with basically educating people as to how to behave, not to get into conflict. I mean, to prevent conflicts between even motorized means of transportation, which are these e-bikes, regular bikes, and pedestrians. So the question here is how we installed signage. Some signage is not effective at all. We're even exploring some pavement markings, including a floor signage, similar to those signage that you see at the airport, let's say, where you have to keep the distance now in response to COVID. So we see it just as more intrusive and being more likely to be seen by someone who is either walking or biking on the path, because when you're walking and biking, you're more focusing in front of you and what is down and scanning the surface in front of you rather than looking at the signage on the side. So the question is, how do you see signage? How do you educate your users as to who goes where, what are the rules of the road, and so forth?
Well, I can take it part of it at least. Well, everything we say that is a matter of context. That's number one. So I wouldn't suggest that just take one example from the other side of the Atlantic and bring it and paste it. But important to say is that, well, you mentioned the word educate or education. The Netherlands is a result of a cultural process. It's not that the bicycle was always there. So we can use a lot of time to explain how was the history. It's very, very interesting. All what the country was facing to get what we have today, right? Protests, you don't know how many things happen. So I think it's important to create a culture. So that's number one. That's how you do that, to encourage small kids to go to school since they are very young. Well, so everybody can really understand how it works from very early stages. We have even exams at 12 years old to get a certificate that allows you to ride your bicycle everywhere. So I think this is number one. And then, of course, you can signals and signage is can be helpful, but I think it's not mandatory. I don't know, Sjors, if you agree with this idea, but
yeah, for me, I would say signals are signage is optional, but the road or the linear park or should tell a story to its users in terms of materialization and the way it's built. And I think that's in the Netherlands, cycling paths are red. Everybody knows that. So at least every local person knows it. If you're in Amsterdam, tourists don't, which is a different risk. But that's actually self-explanatory. And if you look at, for example, in Germany, they are not that fond of using red, and they use let's see if I can share it quickly. But they had this old railway track, and they converted it into a cycling trail or highway or whatever you want to call it, and what they did here is they had asphalt for the cyclists and brick tile for the pedestrians, and they reinforce it or explain it every 500 meters or every kilometer, every few hundred feet with signs. But as you go along, it actually makes it really clear, also with the extra material between the pedestrian and the cycling area. They really demarcate the zones, and it actually goes even through tunnels, which is actually quite extreme. But there are also stretches like here where there is no space for a pedestrian zone, but here let's say, hey, watch out, it's shared, but because it's asphalt, you feel that the cyclist has more priority. And at this point, pedestrians have more priority because you use the materialization used by the pedestrian. This is difficult to achieve on a project by project basis. But for example, you could say on statewide level, say, hey, look, or US-wide, but that's federal, but that's even more difficult, I guess. But try to develop within your municipality or within your county or within your state, this language of materials you use for walking and for cycling. And concrete slabs, in my opinion, do not differentiate enough.
Thank you very much.
All right. Looks like our next question is from Chris Francis.
Yeah, thanks for the nice presentations. This question is related to the first presentation where you were trying to define infrastructure, and you mentioned two keywords, multifunctional and system performance. Can you elaborate on that and give some examples? Because, you know, in the US and especially in Florida, we're going multimodal. And of course, some good discussions have taken place till now, how to make it very context sensitive also. So in that from that standpoint, can you elaborate on the multifunctionalism and also the system performance metrics, if there are any good examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for the question. Yeah, well, actually, the multifunctional approach is what I was briefly trying to explain during the presentation. So maybe not really only focus on the function, like multifunctional, but more like I prefer multidimensional, right? And these urban dimensions are the ones that I was trying to bring the most common ones that we use in our projects, like green-blue infrastructures or other aspects that can be connected to this specific mobility, type of mobility. Of course, there are others we can think about, more complex dimensions, if you want, that are more abstract. But this also always depends on the context and understanding what's there. I mean, if you ask me which are the most important dimensions for the real trail, well, I can guess that blue-green are very, very basic. But then, of course, we also talk about the traditional infrastructures. I mean, we know that there is an investment now for lighting. Okay, well, this is another infrastructure. There are invisible infrastructures also, so, well, becoming more complex. But yeah, I hope that can answer the first part. And then system performance. I'm not an expert on metrics, to be honest. I'm more on the concept. But system, again, we like to bring now in contemporary urban planning and landscape, we bring a lot of terms from other disciplines, like from biology, for instance. So system, when we talk about the system, we talk about the organism, the city as an organism, and the system. So I like to play with these words in a way when we plan. But for metrics, maybe Shores can add something to your question.
Yeah, metrics is always a very broad subject. What are you going to measure? How are you going to value it? One thing which is interesting is somebody from the university. He did a quantitative research to the effects of cycling highways on or cycling infrastructure on car trips, and he found, for example, that where we have cycling highways, and cycling highway, you shouldn't see it as a highway, but more as a connection between cities, which is very comfortable and really good to ride upon. And he was able to show that 5% of the motorists switched modes after construction of the cycling highways. And this was actually a very good, sorry, so a colleague is leaving. It's almost 6 o'clock here, so people are leaving the office. But it really showed that with these metrics, that cycling infrastructure can work in terms of accessibility. But if we, for example, look at happiness, and this is a metric which is not really good to measure. We know that the Dutch children are the happiest children on the planet. Officially, we do not know if there is any relationship with cycling, because it has never been researched. But I know, having grown up in the Netherlands, that when I was 12, I had to go to high school, which was a 6-mile or 7-mile bike ride. But every morning at 7:30, I got on my bike, and I had to be at home at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And later on, I got a job, so I had to be at home 9 in the evening. I got autonomy. I was autonomous. I could make my own decisions to a certain extent. I could go, for example, if we some classes wouldn't go on, I would be able to go into the city, get a doner kebab, very unhealthy fast food, but I would be able to do so, and I wouldn't be constrained by a school bus system or whatsoever. And I think this happiness is a metric which matters. And how to translate it into policy or decision making, I think that's the biggest challenge to do. But I think, and that's also cycling, the challenge with cycling. But also the good thing, it ticks on so many metrics.
Thank you. And if you can share, I mean, over time to either Eric or some of the organizers here, like Chris, Brendan, and about any material that you can share. I like the video that you showed. It had some multifunctional flavors, especially around the roundabout, but we'd like to know more details relating to what are the geometric specifications and dimensions and those kinds of stuff, and the materials itself were varying. So there's a lot of multi-dimensionalism, as you were talking about earlier. But any good examples or even best practices would be helpful. Thank you for the answer. Thank you, James.
All right. Thank you for the question. And it looks like our next question is from Anna.
Yes, and I'm going to come from a very different place. I handle intergovernmental coordination here in Palm Beach County. And you were talking about coordinating and how many municipalities did you have to deal with? You know, so the connectivity issue is one of the things that I'm kind of, when I think about it, I struggle with. And I feel like it requires a long-term vision from a lot of people. And it goes back to that issue of regional government, but not necessarily regional government, everybody agreeing that we're not going to just shift with the whim of the politics. And how do you get there? And I think that what I'm hearing is the Netherlands has a commitment to a lifestyle, and it kind of goes to the why people cycle and how that equates to comfort level too. So when we here in Palm Beach County are talking about multimodal and all of that, I've grown up here. And, you know, I used to ride my bike. I like to ride my bike, but I cannot imagine ever being comfortable using my bike as a mode of transit in this county. And that's just the reality of it for me. And I think when you showed the picture of the people that are enjoying riding their bike, that's me in my neighborhood, right? And that's about as far as I feel I can go. I'm not getting out there on Lake Worth Road or 441. I don't know what you could build that would make me feel comfortable and safe. I would, and even on A1A, those bicyclists that you show that are riding as fast as they can, you can hardly walk across A1A without getting taken out by one of those bikes. So, you know, the comfort level, which is what I thought the dialogue here was about, how do you achieve that comfort level? And are we building it so they will come, or is there really a demand of people saying, we want it, but you're just not providing it? So that's a lot of, I don't know, that's just my thoughts, maybe more than a question.
May I, Adrian?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there are so many facets to your question and your statements, Anna. And I, first of all, I'm getting enthusiastic about your worries, which might sound a little strange, but it's something we have to deal with in the Netherlands as well. And we have got the Liberal Party from Mark Rutte, which is in charge, and they call themselves a Vroom Vroom Party, which translates to I would like to drive, I love to drive, a drive party. They love their cars, and we haven't had national, so federal funding for cycling in decades. So we're really a car-oriented country. And as we have to develop and work for cycling projects, we have to deal also with people who think in motorized transport and who think that traffic jams are the worst problem and that we have to solve traffic jams, etc. So the first thing, actually, what I want to stress is that we are not this heavenly country where everything and cycling paths magically appear. I've got a few slides, and just to highlight, for example, when you're talking about intergovernmental cooperation, this is the region where I live, where I used to work. From the 50s till 2010, it went to quite, for the Dutch, a rapid phase of urbanization. Not as rapid as South Florida, because that's even more extreme, but still. But you see two cities in the 50s, Arnhem and Nijmegen, and somewhere in 2010, it's an old map, I know, but the cities have grown together. There are like 20 municipalities in here, 4 or 5 provinces, a national government, and you do not want to know what. We developed a spaghetti of cycling routes, and this didn't do anything. Nobody cared, and we didn't get funding, and we weren't able to pull through. So we said, okay, we're going to focus on the most interesting connections. Those were these, and even then, we did not build the connections which were potentially the most interesting in terms of attracting cyclists or the highest latent demand. No, we focus on those where we got the most political and civil support. So the little town of Beuningen with 20,000 inhabitants, the mayor and the vice mayors, they love this project. So they got the first cycling highways and cycling improvement plans. And only after 5 years, when some of the projects were built and people came and started using it, the other municipalities wanted to join in. So in terms of metrics, we were looking at a combination of effectiveness of the project, of course, but also a political will to adapt and a way to do it. And I firmly believe, and you have those examples actually in the US as well, if you build it and make it comfortable enough, people will come. And I know of examples, and this is, for me, there are two Florida examples which stand out by me. The first, in Lonely Planet, there was this outdoor shopping mall, which is somewhere in Miami Beach. And I was really curious, what is an outdoor shopping mall? And that turned out to be a pedestrianized street. When you call it an outdoor shopping mall or something, it's immediately special. And the second is, I went to Disney. What is that thing? There's the Disney. There is this beautiful street with all these restaurants and where you can go eat in Orlando. And what I noticed is that people are actually willing to drive their car for pedestrianized environments, or willing to drive towards places where they can ride a bike. Imagine that if you live in an urban environment and you can create routes step by step, which just allow the freedom and enjoyment to ride, like the coastal trail or like some other trails, you can build from there on. You can keep on expanding bit by bit, building the comfortable stretches, finding the support where you go. And you can draw up a master plan and say, I want these and these pieces done by 2020. Or you can have a plan which is a bit broader, but find the support and find the little pieces where you can get support and move from there. And the last US example, which I also found really inspiring, was Delaware. And they have a new development going on in Delaware. They are looking, and the developer has to provide segregated cycling infrastructure alongside the state roads where he develops his plot. So at this point, they've been doing that for 15 years, and everybody is asking why. But now they already have got like 30% of the land, which are, and especially the areas which are the most difficult. They've got these patches of cycling infrastructure, and now they are starting to connect them together. Sorry, I'm taking too much time, Connor. I'm ending my answer, but it's a very difficult and tricky issue.
Thank you.
All right. So we still have 5 more minutes. So if there's any other questions, I highly encourage you to ask. If not, oh, we do have one more question. Harley, you have your hand raised?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for putting this together. It's very informative. First of all, I love the culture in the Netherlands. Everyone's out cycling. I'm shocked that no one's wearing helmets. I wouldn't get on my bicycle without a helmet here in Florida. But
I do not even own one. I have 7 bikes and 0 helmets.
I'm amazed.
But I use my bicycle for day-to-day chores. When I go to the shop, which is half a mile away, I just hop on my bike, go drop and drop off. And the way also my neighborhood is it's mostly 20-mile-an-hour streets. And when I hit a 35-mile-an-hour street, there is infrastructure in place. It's but it's a relaxed thing. And a helmet. There are people who wear helmets, and I'm completely fine with it. But I actually, when I go mountain biking, for example, so when I rent a mountain bike and I go out on trails, I wear a helmet. Mm-hmm. So, and that's, I think, an important thing is the cycling in the Netherlands is not seen as a high risk activity. It's seen as a day-to-day activity. You just like walking. I mean, if you walk, you can also stumble over uneven surfaces, and then you actually also have got about the same chance to hit your head. If you're in a car crash, you're more likely to injure your head if you have a crash than when you have a crash with a bicycle. Mm-hmm. But it's really about risk assessment and how you appreciate, and I think the environment plays a role in that. Right. And
to me, it's like getting in the car. I put my seatbelt on. I get on my bike. I wear my helmet, even if it's around the neighborhood. But that's another thing. The problem I have here in South Florida, I'm not too far from Milos, who's in Miami. I'm in the Fort Lauderdale area. We've grown a lot. The roads are busy, and there seems to be a big conflict of motorist and cyclist, where some cycle groups, I'm a recreational cyclist. I get out, take the right lane or maybe the bike lane. But some cycling groups are a little bit more aggressive. They'll jump red lights and stop
We've
signs.
got 1.5 minutes left.
Sorry. Excuse me?
We've got 1.5 minutes left.
Okay, I'll be quick. How do you change the culture where you get the motorists and the cyclists to respect each other and accept each other? In rural areas, I see it, where a truck driver will move out of its way for a bicycle. In this area, they kind of run us off the road.
It's I think it's first you can do smart design. So make sure that if you have got a 3-lane road, so 3 lanes each direction, I would be annoyed with a cyclist in my way as well, even as a Dutchman. Adrian?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's you need to plan ahead in advance. You need to understand what's the user and to define a different design. I saw in some of the pictures even that you just paint green within the lanes that are meant to be over 50 kilometers per hour. So that in the Netherlands that won't happen because it's not allowed. You need to make it separate. So anyway, create rules, plan ahead, long-term visions, try to do it step by step. Sometimes we do acupunctures, we do pilots, we educate people, and suddenly probably you get people without helmets in the US as well.
Thanks again.
Welcome.
All right.
And
So I think, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Connor. Finish
No, I
up.
was just going to say, I think we only have a couple seconds left, and then I think we're going to get pulled into the main chat room. I just wanted to thank you both for joining us today and answering all the questions and having a great discussion. Yeah, it looks like we have 10 seconds left, so we'll see you all in the